All right, guys, we'll get rolling. Really not much left to say from Saturday's performance. I do think tremendous challenge for our football team coming this Saturday. Really what we've seen from this Baylor team is really impressive. I would say one of the fastest football teams that we've played in a long time, really skilled team, and obviously a very veteran football team really across the board. So great challenge for us, and with that said, I'll open up to questions for you guys.
Matt, excuse me, Matt, with the quality and quantity of your depth chart, is this as well prepared to enter a Big 12 conference as this program's been in years? And I know you can only speak for whatever the last 6 or so.
I would say from a depth standpoint, I feel really confident about that aspect of things. I think the fact, maybe what surprised me a little bit, is the amount of young guys that have earned the right to play and have played so well for us, really, in terms of some special teams, and now guys really forcing themselves into the too deep. I think those things have certainly been positive and created really positive depth for us, really from the top down. So yeah, I do. I feel really good about where our depth chart is and the amount of guys that are playing for us right now, and I think that is a positive.
One more follow-up. Among the losses, your losses the last 4 years or so, have been 3 points or less. I mean, you've had a lot of victories too, but does this team appear to be better prepared to handle something like that now with Connor and with Mavis? And if you want to talk about that dynamic too, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think from our regard, we're going to find out how prepared we are to handle close games. I think you've seen 2 already this year. One was positive, one was not. I think to me, that's more a mentality of what your culture is. Can you handle adversity? Can you handle, when things don't go well? And, last year's team was able to show that within football games. And when things weren't perfect within the game, they had the ability to regroup and make those plays in the moment to get the momentum back and be able to in terms win the football game. They were able to do that. And, I think that's still yet to be known about this team. I don't know if we've proven that. Can we handle adversity week to week? Probably. We've shown that a little bit. Can we handle the adversity within the game? And to have kickers that have consistency and success, that can put points on the board and you have confidence in, I do think those are really big positives. I think a hidden big play even early on in special teams in the first 3 weeks was the UNI game. We kicked the field goal to go up. We're up by 6 and really decide to play defense to try to win the football game at the end. They have a field return coming out. A year ago, we would have had to face that field return, which I think is, that's always a scary return that you have to field. And Andrew kicks it out, and we're able to play defense. And so I just think there's some dynamics that maybe we haven't been maybe where we wanted to be, and we're a lot closer to being that right now. And to have those in tight games, not even just putting points on the board, but other kicking situations, I think it's certainly beneficial to us.
What makes X such a productive wide receiver?
I just think he's so explosive, and I think his explosion is really seen with after the catch. His ability to make somebody miss and his ability to have yards after the catch is, of the great receivers we've had so far here, I would say it's as good as any of them. And that's the thing that is so impressive with what he does. And again, big play last week, the first 3rd and 3 of the game. That's probably a conversion, goes from a conversion to a 14, 15-yard gain, and you can feel the momentum come off of those plays. So, I think what's exciting about him is not only has he proven that 2 years in a row that he can be explosive after the catch, but I think also from the standpoint of now explosive down the field, and he's made some of those plays this year so far, which is really part of his growth process.
How is he technically? Because he seems to get open. He doesn't have, like the measurables like a Hakeem or LaMichael or even Allen.
Yeah, he's certainly not the 6'6" guy, but I think, he's the elite at precision at the top of his route, great hands, can make the traffic catch, and probably has some of those qualities that maybe where some of those other guys at least lacked in terms of polish at the top of his route, which is, when you talk about that elite receiver at the next level, with the rules being a little bit different, you got to be able to have separation. You got to be able to win at the top of the route, and Texas certainly does that at a really high level for us.
Do you see him projecting to be able to play in the NFL?
Boy, I would think he's on track to have a great career, not only here at Iowa State, but certainly after Iowa State, just because I think those intangibles of he can run, he can separate, and he's certainly got really great hands. Those are all real positives for him moving forward.
Going back to some of the young guys a little bit, first quick question, have Jalen Knoll and Eli Sanders won their respective return jobs?
Well, I think they both made big steps last week. What Jalen was able to do in the game are some things we've been missing, really over the last couple years, in my opinion. And, for him there was a punt right at the end of the football game that's kind of hung up there. That ball has hit and bad things have happened, and he goes up and makes a great fair catch and catches the football. So I think we're really excited about what Jalen has brought to the table just in one football game. We'll continue to see. I think that's a growth process for him and certainly for us. And then Eli, same thing. I think was really close to having two big returns in that game, and yet both of them were past the 25-yard line and positive returns. So I think both guys will continue to grow into those roles. Both guys have the elite speed and the elite skill to, be a difference maker in those roles, and that's a big challenge. So, we're putting a lot on those two young guys' plate for sure.
What do they need to do to build that trust for you to trust them?
Yeah, I think trust is built through consistency of effort and really consistency of production. And, it's as much of anything in those roles is communication and securing the football. We all love the big return. Those things are great. But the ability to secure the football and make sure the ball comes back to the offensive unit in the best position possible, that's still the number one goal and priority. And so I think a lot of times that's just repetition, and that's the ability for them to be consistent and understand what's being asked of them in each situation.
Matt, another young guy's question, but it may be a slightly different wrinkle. You've talked all the time, especially coming into the season, about how impressed you were with guys who haven't played here, but what they've done. To be able to see them in all three phases play the last several minutes of that game, A, how vital for your football team, but B, how neat to reward them.
Yeah, I think great to reward them, we're still in the early part of the football season. I think we're still trying to identify who this team is. And boy, we have gone down to week 4, 5, 6, where all of a sudden somebody's got to step up into a critical role and be able to play on our football team. And to be able to get those guys game experience and maybe just know a little bit more about who some of those guys are. And, some of these guys are demanding to get on the football field. I think that talk about Miles Purchase. I mean, man, what he's done for 3 weeks now on our kickoff team, what he's done in practice, and then the plays that he makes, the 4th-and-1 play he makes where he covers the guy on the corner route. I just think growing into a role, Bo Freiler, I mean, man, he's had more kickoff tackles than anybody on our team in the first 3 weeks, and a guy that's been physical and has earned the right now to get reps at middle safety, and I think everybody's really excited about where he's at. Jalen Knoll, Deion Silas. I think that part of it is exciting. And then you talk about even some of those redshirt guys, like a guy like Hunter Zenzen and some of those guys who just continue to do their job in special teams. And it's like, man, it's like the natural growth process, I feel like, in our program. If you can handle your role and your responsibility, and it may be small, then we're willing to, man, how do we help get that guy even more opportunities in our program? And I'm really appreciative that our kids have bought into that model, and I think it's fun to be able to reward them and see them then handle the opportunities that come their way. And I think all those guys that I talked about are certainly earning the right to get themselves on the field and forcing the hand of the coaches to say, hey, you got to play me.
I noticed Datron didn't play on Saturday. My first part of the question is he banged up, and then the second part, how did you feel TJ and Miles played in his spot?
He is, got banged up a week ago. We ended up, kind of was 50-50 in terms of, where he was by Thursday. Just still wasn't right, so we didn't take him on the trip. We're hoping that he's back out at practice today for our football team. But I'll tell you what, I mean, the play of TJ Tampa in that football game, a couple of plays that he makes, I think TJ's one of those guys that when you talk about young stars in our program, I feel like he's one of those guys. I mean, what he's done in terms of his length, his ability, his speed, what he looks like today. Man, I thought he was incredible, and we'll need TJ, and we're going to need Speedy, and we're going to need all those guys down the road, but how big for us to get him into the game. And then, like I said, I think Miles Purchase and what he was able to do for us, DJ Miller's given us really good reps out there. So we feel really confident about the depth of that secondary unit, and we know it's going to get tested as we get into Big 12 play, and it's going to get tested this week.
What has allowed Jerry to come in and play at the level that he has so quickly? I mean, I know he'd played before, but I mean, he hardly skipped a beat without Orion.
Tell me who again?
Gary.
Oh, Gary Vaughn. Yeah. No, I think for him, and again, I think that same model, Jared, man, he's been the guy that started on special teams for the last 2 years on every special teams unit. And the trust that he's had built up with our coaching staff has been exceptional. And, I think a year ago, Ryan's dinged up at times, and they're really kind of splitting reps. And I think he really built his confidence as a linebacker a year ago. And I see him kind of in the same mold of what Jake Hummel did in our program, where, man, Jake was special teams. Then you get into his, really get into his junior year, and he's splitting time with Marcel. And then by last year, it was like, holy smokes, this guy's a really good football player. And I think you're seeing the same model from Gary Vaughn, and bought into being a team football player. Has never complained about playing time, just waited for his opportunity. But boy, what he's done the last 2 weeks has been exceptional.
Looking ahead to Baylor, 2 running backs in Abram Smith and Treston Ebner, 300 yards, both on the ground. What about them have you seen on film that allows them to be so explosive, dangerous on the ground?
Yeah, I think it starts with their offensive line. I beyond impressed with, certainly the offensive structure that they have right now, what's going on there. A new hire as the offensive coordinator from a year ago. I think the rhythm that they're playing with on the offensive side of the football in terms of, man, the ability to run the football, really set their quarterback up to be in, positive situations throughout the football game. And I think that whole rhythm of what they're doing offensively has certainly led to them get off to a great start and really impressive in the 2 backs. Both of them are different, but both of them have the ability to hit the home run ball. And, you see that not only in terms of offensive production, but you also see it in terms of special teams production, both of them being in the return game as well.
How much does seeing Brees in practice kind of help the defense get ready for running backs like this?
Well, I would say the one thing that we're positive is seeing, and hopefully, I think we're getting to see is, man, not only Brees, but you got Jarrell, you got Eli Sanders, you got, you certainly got Deion Silas. There's a lot of guys there that, prepare our defense to play against really, really talented running backs. But again, I still think when you look at this Baylor team, it starts up front. It starts with what they're doing on the offensive line, and it starts with their coordination of that aspect of it, and that'll be a great challenge for us this weekend.
Just to revisit the last game, did you come out of it feeling a little refreshed after, the events that had transpired the week before? Is that a feeling you get out of a game like that?
Yeah, I felt pretty good on the Monday right after. I mean, we're in the early part of the season. This is part of the process of 1 week at a time, 1 day at a time, and I think we've always followed that model. So, we've never really gotten too high with a win or too low with a loss, and just keep trying to grow. And I think this team will only continue to grow because we've got great veteran leadership that understands what that looks like.
You guys made it through the Big 12 season, better than anyone last year, not only record-wise, but being healthy, playing your best football in November. Can you learn anything from that, or is this a whole nother beast given it's not the pod scheduling it was a year ago?
Yeah, I think it's going to get interesting to see, what does that look like. But I think the planning part from our end has always been around understanding what those challenges have looked like and what was coming our way. And so, again, I think we'll be able to make a decision at the end of the season. Was our plan holistically from January through fall camp, was it planned out the right way for us to be our best when our best is needed? And I would still say I'll fight every day of the week to knowing the schedule we play in, the conference we play in, that you better be your best. And you see this right now in the Big 12, I think across the board, you're talking about a really high-end conference right now. You're going to have to be your best each and every weekend that you play. And so I think our mindset was that really going into it. We knew the challenges and the uniqueness that we dealt with a year ago, what we learned from a year ago. but also how do we apply it to be our best in conference season as we get ready to go. And man, you're challenged right off the bat. You're coming off of a short weekend in terms of getting back here early Sunday morning and playing a late game Saturday night to have to ready to rock and roll, which I imagine will be an intense environment, warm weather, and all those good challenges that'll be there. So, we'll be tested right away on that theory.
Do people appreciate the challenge of playing 9 Big 12 games in 10 weeks? Especially, nobody's thinking about the logistics about you guys getting home at 7 o'clock on Sunday morning, and things like that occur throughout a season.
Yeah, I don't know, what the outside world thinks of it. I know from our end, again, those are things that make the challenge of what we have to do and the team we have to be week in and week out, and makes it really unique. And again, on top of that, I think in terms of where this conference is right now, I think we felt really confident going in. This was going to be a great year for the Big 12, and I think early on you see a really competitive Big 12 structure, and man, you're going to get right off the gate probably the hottest team in the Big 12. So, great challenge for everybody involved, and I do think it is unique into, man, being a part of this now for 6 years. You got to be on your A game, because if you're not playing your A game, you're going to get beat.
As Jared said, Gary Vaughn has played very well in place of Orion, but given the fact that you're going to be, like you said, you're going to be playing in heat, you could maybe need some depth at linebacker. What's the Orion situation?
Yeah, I think we'll probably know a little bit more as we get into this week. Sunday we were able to get out and do a little bit, and he was out there with us, which was awesome. I fully expect him to be part of practice this week, and to me, it's still the mindset of, man, it's still the early part of the season. This is a huge football game. If he can play, we'd love to have him. But if we're going to put him at any risk that he could further injure himself, we certainly won't do that as well. So I'd still say it's going to be a game-time decision right now.
We touched on the secondary earlier. I'm curious, what have you seen from Isheem early in this season? I think he's third on this team in tackles. I mean, what's allowed him to be so successful?
Yeah, I just think the one thing for Isheem, his great challenge going into this fall was consistency. Can you consistently play at the level that we saw him play at times last year? And I would say in 3 games, his consistency has been excellent. I think he's been able to go off to a really great start. I think it's been really positive that he hasn't had to play every snap. I think Bo Freiler really coming on has allowed him to not have to play every single snap on defense, so he can be his best when his best is needed. And so I do think we're in a better spot to serve Isheem to play that consistently. But I've been really proud of what I've saw for the first 3 weeks of Isheem Young.
We were talking about the explosiveness with Xavier earlier. I'm curious, it feels like every single week he's laying out a pretty big hit, it seems like. I mean, what about that position do you need, that type of, violence, frankly, and that aggressiveness to make him successful?
Yeah, I just think we ask so much of our receiving core in terms of not only catching the football, but the ability to block downfield, and I think when you talk about X, I think when you talk about Joe Skates, those two have done a phenomenal job blocking the perimeter, and a lot of credit to Coach Shieldhouse, because I think day one, our receiving room isn't about catches. It's not about getting the ball in your hands. It's about, are you willing to block downfield for your teammates? And then we start to get into those other things. And that group's done a great job. You saw Easy Anderson come into the game, do some really good things from that regard. Sean Shaw coming back and being a huge asset of that. So I think just globally at the receiver position, it starts with, can you be physical at the point of attack, and then moving on from there.
Matt, Charlie, I think you said after the game was getting as close to 100% as he's been. With him having to deal with maybe, who knows, ongoing, with the nature of the injury, maybe he's 90 to 98 all year. How does the value of his experience, and also the fact that he probably applies logic to every situation, help in not having a guy trying to push himself out there more, getting too anxious about it, given what he can do?
Yeah. I would just say this about Charlie. I mean, Charlie worked obsessively this offseason, and to the shape that he is in physically, before he got injured in fall camp, I would say Charlie looked way better than maybe even I thought Charlie could get himself physically. He was exceptional. And to have a setback, and I think this is Charlie's growth, he cares so much sometimes that physical setback is sometimes that can be mentally debilitating because you work so hard to get to the point that he was at that, you know, you're almost talking, there was a point there you were talking about, man, is this long term where you might not have Charlie, or is this something that he's going to be able to come back from? And I'm so proud of how he handled it because, number one, I think mentally, and this is experience and this is wisdom, is, you know, I think he was able to have poise. Let's find out exactly what's wrong. Then we found out that, you know what, there's going to be a chance to get him back. You know, obviously it wasn't the timetable that we maybe wanted him back or the speed that we wanted him back at full speed. But how he handled this is, I think, a great example of really who he's become. You know, he never shied away from leadership during that injury. He did a great job of mentoring the young players, but most importantly, he got himself back to 100%, you know, and I think he's almost close to that, you know, as close as he's ever been, you know, to where we saw in fall camp really on Saturday, which was awesome. And so, you know, I think that's big for our football team, you know, and again, for even Charlie to play 2 weeks ago, you know, you're probably talking about 75%. And yet, you know, felt like it was the best interest for the team that he'd be out there and help us try to win the football game. You know, a lot of credit to him. But boy, he's been a tremendous grower in our program, and obviously a tremendous asset to everything about our culture.
Matt, I think we've talked a lot about the defense, obviously, but I think if I'm counting correctly, we've only got 3 turnovers here in the first 3 games. Is that enough for you? Is that an area you'd like to see a little bit more?
Yeah,
maybe the one area they could improve, I guess, as a unit.
Yeah, I think that sometimes that's hard because, you know, one thing that you got to look at, they played, 50-some snaps last week. And so, you know, I think the reality for what we're doing on defense, you know, I almost equate 3 and outs with a turnover in a football game. And I think what they're doing getting off the field, they've been exceptional for us. The turnover margin in general needs to be better. I think we're at -2 right now. And, you know, that 2 weeks ago hurt us and hurt that margin. So I think that number is something that we talk a lot about in our football program, and it needs to be better. But those are things from a defensive perspective. Man, sometimes those hidden things of 3 and outs, playing less plays because they're getting 3 and outs, I think that sometimes skews the turnover margin.
Matt, a year ago, the season was split up with multiple bye weeks. This year, very different layout. I mean, how much do you think that impacts your guys this year, and what has your training staff done to ensure longevity this season?
Well, you know, I've talked a lot. We really have totally changed our training model from January on, knowing the challenges at hand. You know, will that pay off? Was that the right move? What does that all look like? Boy, I'm really confident in it's going to be the perfect thing for this team. But I think knowing that it is drastically different. And I think part of that difference is now you're going to get into our 4th and 5th games in a row. I think, you know, I was talking a little bit earlier that we're going to find out like really fast coming this Saturday. You're talking about a quick turnaround. You know, you got home early Sunday morning. Got a big game with a tremendous opponent. You know, can you be up for it? Can you be ready for it? What's that mindset? How do we get our guys ready? Those are a lot of conversations we're having because you want to put your kids in the best position to be successful. And I still feel like that's my responsibility to do everything in my power to get our best players to play their best on Saturday. And, you know, I think the old school mindset of, man, we're just going to grind them through it. I just don't think that applies anymore. I think there's more wisdom, there's more research, there's a better way to do it, and you know, we're certainly trying. Are we perfect? Man, I don't know that, but you know, we're going to continue to do everything we can to give our kids the best situation to be their best.
All right, Coach, thanks.
Thank you, guys.